Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Sinner. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we kind of finally get context to because the whole point was alright, there's blood on the radio, but why would there be? Well, now we know Jamie turned on the radio because obviously you had the situation of Nick accepting he was dying. It's okay, I see how it is. And obviously, the fact is that Jamie wanted to make him more comfortable and turns on the radio. He's like, how is that? And then Nick kind of just nods it's good. So in the grand scheme of things, it's interesting because that kind of ties into other stuff to this episode, because a big thing in this episode seems like Jamie doesn't like lies. I think he himself feels like he's been living this lie, because there's multiple instances throughout the episode where he kind of gets pissed about it. When him and Layla are having dinner with those that couple, the whole conversation about the whole thing about getting over death, it's something to just kind of move past. And the fact of the matter is, he's like, we kind of all live our lives kind of hiding away from death, whether it be us putting people in homes. It's we don't embrace the fact is that, death, we kind of act like it isn't there. So we kind of for him, it's we keep up this pretense, and he doesn't like that. Even his student, Emma, it's all this stuff you're writing about, you're in this letter. It's no, this isn't you. This is just some it's so general that it could be anyone. It's no, put some heart into it, put into who you are, because he's also talk about the fact is, isn't it crazy that this one paper can decide your entire life and stuff like that. So it seems obviously he's pulling more from himself. Even the fact is he was cussing more because he was it's bullshit. She didn't say anything about it, but he didn't. I mean, granted, we've only had one episode prior to this. They seeing him as a teacher, but it didn't seem like he had that manner. But I think it's just a thing of caution's kind of being thrown to the wind. Obviously, he kind of gets chastised for it later on because the parents are no, we didn't, pay for her to come to a private school for this. It's you were going to write her a glowing recommendation, blah, 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 blah. Obviously, he's seeing Nick kind of stabbing the dude's hand, because we got more context with that too, because it turns out obviously he lied about Nick just showed up at his place. It's no, him and Nick actually met together a few days beforehand, 3 days ago, in fact, or in particular, the time Nick got the stab wound in his hand. Basically, they haven't been in communication for the past 18 years. And the fact is, the moment Jamie reached out, Nick was no, I want to look you face to face because I wanted to know why you cut me out of your life. He's I needed to understand, because at first Jamie was about extending out a hand. He was no, we're past, no, we don't have that type of relationship, man. This isn't just a handshake type of thing, and him even going out to dinner and stuff like that. And it's you've done well for yourself. He's well, I kind of had to when you just kind of up and left. He's no, you did me a favor. You did me a favor or something by doing that. So it's okay, so what I'm picking up from this episode, especially Nick's behavior, him going over, it's you kind of once you get to the top of the mountain, you're always curious what's there, but when you actually get there, you realize there's nothing there, and the only thing you can do is jump. So it's I guess it's almost this thing of life, you're always reaching for this top of this pinnacle. They'd be God, there's got to be something great, something magical or amazing or worthwhile at the top, but at the top there is nothing. All you see is everything down below, and just all you have is the option to jump. And it's kind of jump with no parachute. So it's okay, so at first I'm okay, so we kind of going adrenaline junkies type of thing, because the moment, it was kind of disgusting seeing that, when he's holding the knife there, he's okay, and pushing his hand against the knife until the knife goes through. And it's because it was oh, so what's this whole situation about your relationship? Nick was asking Jamie that, and Jamie's no, Layla, she's great, this and that, but it's he's I don't feel anything. So hence why I'm okay, it seems they're a little adrenaline junkie-ish, that it's kind of living your truth, just kind of being yourself and just kind of embracing the rush of life. Because later on, Harry ended up seeing a video of them on top of the roof, and it's whoa, was he going to jump or something like that? Because Nick's perching it, telling him no, go ahead and stand up there, and then Nick's beside him, and Nick says this line of are you going now? Are you sure you're going to take that next step? Because last time you bailed. So that's why I'm it definitely seems like an adrenaline junkie thing of living on the edge. And I guess last time, and it's something Jamie had said, is that every time Nick kind of like things got too intense. So it's like, I guess they kind of pushed themselves further and closer to the end. Immediately in my head, and it's a weird reference to make, I kind of get like a Flatliners type of vibe from the situation of like, oh, how close can we get before going completely over the edge? But I guess that's the point, that like maybe things got so intense that they were literally going over the edge. But it's like, if you're not taking the risk to go all the way, if you're too scared to take the risk to go all the way, then what's the point? But like whatever went down, Jamie got scared and it got too real, it got too close, but Nick was like, wait, what? And so Jamie just kind of bailed, cut him out of his life for the past 18 years. And I guess Jamie's been trying to live this life of just kind of like burying that, but because of all that, Jamie kind of doesn't feel anything. Like the sad thing is in his relationship with his wife, them having a baby, it's all the things. I think it's a thing of like, oh, you have these like, he kind of talks about it later on. It's like, oh, you want me to just kind of get over it and move on. The fact is you want me to fit in this little mold. It's like the mode of what is, a happy life is like, oh yeah, I'm married, I'm having a kid on the way, I have a good job. It's, kind of like a, standard life, but it's like at the end of the day, that's kind of boring in his mind, especially because whatever went down between him and Nick, it opened his eyes to something else. And it's like, once your eyes are open, it's really hard to kind of go back. And obviously he went kind of cold turkey for the past 18 years until he called Nick up. And then it's just like, he got that itch again and he just couldn't quite scratch it. And the fact of the matter is, and I think he grew to resent Nick, because there is love there, but I guess it's almost turned to resentment because he's so against what Nick wants. Because like, oh, Nick is kind of intoxicating him, pulling him back into something. It's like, I don't want to do that again. Not unless we're suggesting they actually did something super effed up years ago, like which could have been, maybe they killed somebody and obviously Jamie couldn't go back through with that, or maybe they came close to killing somebody. Like I said, it went too far at some point in time, and Jamie didn't want to kind of be a part of that anymore, and he just walked away. But Nick was like, this was kind of our thing, and you just walked away. You left me hanging with this whole situation, whatever it was. So that's kind of how I'm feeling it. Because even later on, Jamie is giving that guy his whiskey and everything, and he's like, oh, like in his head, Nick is playing the music. I was thinking like, you're about to kill this old dude. I was like, all right, you're going to take the pillow and suffocate him. It's like, no, Jamie starts strangling him with his bare hands. I was like, I wasn't expecting it. I would have expected the pillow, but Jamie stops because the dude starts fighting back and kind of pushes him back. So like I said, it's that thing of like getting so close to it. It's a rush of doing something. It's like, I think the whole twisted thing of looking into someone's eye just as the light fades away type of shit. Like I said, it's just like getting as close to, it's just like upping the ante of doing something crazy just to feel alive because they don't feel anything. Maybe it's something in their past that kind of made them like that kind of numbed them, and now they found a way, like I said, adrenaline junkie level of just trying to find something. Because it's interesting how this ends up tying into Harry's story a little bit, because obviously Harry, it's like he's not trying to act too quickly on this whole situation with Jamie because he's trying to take his time to see like what he can potentially figure out about everything. I guess even figure out Jamie's situation. So he ends up following Jamie, and obviously Jamie's looking up, plants and trees and stuff like that. And obviously Harry, being the plant expert that he is, kind of talks to him. And there's a whole conversation they ended up, having about, because, Harry suggesting like, oh no, let me help you out. It's like, oh, you don't want this, you want this and that. Harry kind of pretending to be a friend, even coming over to like help put the tree in and everything. And during the conversation, he talks about the fact that, Jamie opened up the fact that he's like, yeah, everyone's kind of, even Layla, she's great and everything, but even she looks at me like, this is a friend you haven't seen in like 18 years. Shouldn't you, why is it driving you so crazy? And it's just like, and he was like, I can't really describe the feeling. And Harry says, it's hollowing. And then Jamie kind of looks at him, and Harry's like, because of his mom's situation, which obviously we learned about last season, and I think we might kind of like elaborate on that more. It's the fact of the matter is, he saw the bipolar that was his mom, like her condition, it kind of like hollowed her, and and I think that's something Jamie and Harry can kind of relate on, because I think Harry himself is kind of hollowed to a certain extent, because once again, it's like I brought it up before, Harry's kind of awkward around people. It almost seems like he doesn't know how to have natural, like, human interactions. He's just like his mannerisms, the way he's just like, yeah, like you saw so much of it in season 2. It's been a while since I've seen season 1, so I can't remember, but season 2 obviously is fresher in my mind, but it's like, just his normal comment. Like, he doesn't know how to like really talk to people. So I think we're kind of setting this whole thing up where it's like, I think because every case, Harry finds a little bit of himself in it. He sees a little bit of himself in Cora's case. He saw himself a little bit in Julian's case. He sees himself a little bit in Jamie's case. So I think it's like there's almost like, because even Jamie later on, it's like, well, at first you're my friend and now trying to pretend to be my friend and now you're getting all accusatory on me, which I think that's why Jamie got extra pissed, because he was like, oh, so you're lying to me. It's like he doesn't like lies, you know? And once again, because he feels like he himself is, at least maybe for the past 18 years, he's been living a lie. And it's just not until recently that like I said, that itch, that adrenaline kind of, that rush came back, that itch he needed to scratch type of situation. So, because obviously it's not all piecing together, just, you know, like I said, everything Jamie's doing, it just seems like, even like him having sex with Layla, it was just like, I was like, I need to feel something, because while he's doing that, he's literally thinking about what happened in the restaurant, because it made him feel something. So it's just kind of like trying to recapture that feeling, but it's just not the same. And he's beating himself up about it, because it's like, no, stop it. Like, you killed Nick, but the fact of the matter is you needed to, because you need to get him out of your life, because you need to have your normal life. This is your wife. You're about to have a baby. Like, you're supposed to have this normal life. You're supposed to be normal, but you got all this crap going on in your head. He's beating himself up about it. He doesn't know how to like handle all of it, and he's kind of breaking down because of all that. So it's interesting too, because like obviously there's the whole angle of Sonia trying to ask questions about like, okay, she saw, you know, she's reporting to Harry about like, oh, she saw Jamie the other day, like on her property and everything. It's like he saw me and then he drove away, but obviously Harry's like, we can't really do anything. But it was interesting because he ends up running into Sonia at the restaurant and everything. And it's like, you know, he's like, oh, I'm sorry. He's like, I get it. Like, you know, this is obviously you came in with your concerns, and obviously you think that they potentially could have done something to you, or they were on the way to your house to do something. So I can understand why you'd be so scared. Or it turns out that Sonia had a stalker. And so that situation ended up getting dealt with, because she was like, yeah, we had sessions and stuff like that, but that particular person took it at more as kind of like our relationship being something that it wasn't. They were arrested, but obviously she still kind of feels the vibes of it. So it's a situation of like, she's kind of worried that maybe it's kind of a repeat of that. But then like Harry kind of gives her his number, and he's like, oh, so this is your move, huh? You just give people your number? And Harry's like, wait, what? No. He was like socially awkward about it. But she's like, I'm just kidding. And she's like, a key thing to kind of keep in mind is like when someone kind of brings up a stalker situation, you might not want to pick that as a time to kind of give someone your number. But the fact is, Harry gets his food and he's like, oh, all right. And he kind of like, well, good night. He kind of walks away, right? And, you know, so it's like, part of me is also wondering, like, is that going to turn into something? I mean, to be fair, Harry's single, but, you know, it might turn into a complicated thing of like, oh, this is the middle of the case and everything, but maybe something will come from that. Who knows? But there's also like Sonia was actually painting what appears to be Jamie, and she obviously couldn't focus, so she goes on a walk, finds a hole, and there's a shovel and a jacket, and it's like, okay, so Harry immediately was like, okay, went to Jamie about it, like, you're accusing me of doing that. Maybe it was Nick that was doing it. It's like, well, it happened on her property, because he actually was kind of messing with Jamie earlier in the episode by being like, yeah. Because like Jamie was like, yeah. So why do you have that grid? It's like, it was almost like you're out there looking for something. He's like, oh no, it's just natural police procedural. He's trying to like give Jamie enough rope to kind of pull him along, kind of like see how, you know, he'll react in the whole situation. It's kind of like the whole point. But now with this whole situation, so it's like, what is that supposed to mean? Because obviously Sonia's like, oh, maybe they were going to kill me and put me here. I mean, more so than, well, that's actually what Jamie was thinking. Like, maybe that's what Nick was going to do. But now I'm thinking maybe it's Flatlanders type of situation. Maybe one of them was going to get buried there, or maybe they were going to do that to Sonia. Like I said, that whole thing of maybe they were going to rush to our house. It's like, oh, some random person lives out here. Let's do something dangerous. Let's get close to killing her. Maybe we'll bury her alive type of situation. Knock her out, bury her alive type of thing. I don't know. It you know, it seems like there's definitely something with Sonia too. Like, I don't know. Because just the way her and Jamie looked at each other, like, I guess she pieced it together like, oh, you're the dude, and he kind of because he likes to say like, oh, he was like, oh, because he lied to Harry and was like, oh, I was going to go to her place to kind of like apologize for like what we did to her property and stuff like that. But it's like, I don't know. Maybe there's more to this. Maybe it has something to do with Sonia's past with the whole stalker situation. Maybe that's kind of what made them decide to choose. I mean, in particular, like there's kind of like only a one-way place to her. I don't know. It seemed interesting to pick that particular target, but I don't know. Obviously, just things aren't well in Jamie's case because, like, you know, it's obviously turned into complications of his marriage and everything because, like, you know, Layla is kind of being like, get over it. I don't know what you're going through, but basically it's like, get your shit together. We got a baby on the way. The fact is you didn't answer your phone. He's like, you weren't going to have a baby in the 3 hours. And she's like, well, you wouldn't, like, you know, it's because, like, once again, he said it, like, I'm fitting into this mold and I'm trying to break free. I'm stretching free of it. And you just keep pushing me back into it because that's where you want me to be, isn't it? So that's the whole thing in itself. Then I'm like, I don't know what to, you know, make of that. Like I said, this is all kind of where my mind is on it. Well, I mean, obviously there is definitely more to it, but the thing is like, well, how do we go from the restaurant like 3 days, well, sometime earlier to him showing up at Jamie's place? Because obviously it's a thing of like, oh, like you already kind of, you spurred it back in me. It's like, oh no, we're not just going to walk away now. Like you've kind of awakened the beast. Like you got back in contact with me. You want to make it seem like, oh, you kind of got a little taste and you just want to walk away. It's like, no, maybe Jamie was kind of like, yeah, I got my thrill so I can go back to my life. But Nick was like, no, you're not going to abandon me for another 18 years. It's like, there's this whole complicated relationship they have. It's like, it's just like Jamie needs Nick and Nick needs Jamie just as much. It also kind of brings everything back to retrospective, like why Nick was like, oh, okay. He was kind of accepting because it's like, oh, the thrill of kind of being like, oh, like this is it. There's nothing better than actually not even just hitting that edge, actually crossing that line of over to like there's something to it. And I guess knowing that there's a little bit to the fact is that Jamie's kind of responsible for it. Maybe that's something, maybe it kind of helped Jamie to a certain extent, like seeing, once again, like from a psychotic standpoint, maybe like seeing the light fade from his eyes. Hence, like I said, like this situation wasn't as hands-on because it was kind of an accident, like whether or not Jamie caused it or not, like it was very indirect, whereas like with the old man in that hospital or whatever, it was more on purpose. So like I said, obviously like all of this is taking its toll on Jamie because obviously on his marriage and everything, but also like obviously he had straight up had a panic attack about the whole thing. So it's so interesting because I brought this up before in last week's episode. It's so interesting because this case is already very different in the regard of like, once again, in the past 2 seasons, it's been kind of a pretty immediate thing of like arresting said person behind things happening. Like Cora literally got arrested in like the first episode. Julian's situation was a little complicated because he did eventually get arrested later on, but also it's just like it was kind of still known immediately like, oh, he did it because he ended up confessing to it. But obviously Jamie's situation is a little bit different because this is kind of stringing along. So I'm wondering, is he going to be in this like limbo area of like Harry kind of knowing that he's behind some of this, but obviously it's like Harry's still trying to figure it out ahead of time, like what's this all about? Because like, yeah, there's evidence kind of suggesting he did nothing, but it's also like there's still pieces to the puzzle that they're trying to piece together. So it's like, it's so, like I said, it's so interesting because it just seems like it's not as immediate as the Julian and Cora situation. I'm surprised, like we're already at episode 2 now and that still hasn't happened even at the end. So it definitely seems like there's similarities between the cases, but at the same time, they also do an interesting thing of very like heavily distancing themselves by like, you know, behind some of the reasoning behind the cases and just like the approach to those situations. Like I said, it feels so different, and I think that's such an interesting thing of like it hasn't been to the point that Jamie's gotten arrested already. That's, you know, like I said, Julian's situation was just complicated, but it's just, like I said, the entire approach to this season so far has been interesting. So, but regardless, like I said, I'm just getting kind of, I feel like, caught up in semantics and stuff like that. Either way, I'm very interested to see where all this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.